and with me we have not AA Ron, but
I'm AM, and I somehow magically teleported back here very quickly.
boom.
So give me a minute to adjust. But yeah, I'm a solution architect here at AWS, and one of your co-hosts on AWS On Air will be with you these 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday. But we've got a wonderful guest with us, Alan.
Hey.
Also,
thank
my
you.
first name, Alan, is part of it. Alan Michael. That's
there
what
you
the
go.
name is for. Tell us about you, Alan.
So hey, I'm a principal product specialist. I cover AWS Controltower, Service Catalog, Resilience Hub, and passionate about multi-account architectures and management and governance. So I'm super psyched to be here.
Yeah, and today you're here to talk about scaling with governance and controls on AWS using Controltower.
Yeah, Controltower, and we'll get into some Service Catalog as well. I got some demos here.
Oh, magic words, demos. We love demos. Everyone here, actually, we do also have some people answering questions in the chat, so feel free to type your questions and let us know what you want to learn and what you want to hear Alan say. Duck-billed platypus.
Okay, yeah, maybe. So Alan, you know, when you're thinking about multiple accounts, right? A lot of people, I think, start out not with a multi-account strategy, start out just with one account. But what's the problem? Like, why do I need more than one account? I think that's kind of the basic question everybody has to tangle with at some point. Why would I extend past just the single account?
I think from like the growth standpoint, and you'll see some customers that'll have a bunch of smaller environments, right? You get to a point where you kind of outgrow that environment. You know, you get limit issues, you may get some, you know, performance issues, you got your production, you got your dev, you got your test all in one spot. Not a great idea. Your IAM starts getting complicated because now you have to figure out who has access to what, and you start building more and more complex IAM models. It's better to just break them apart into individual accounts. You break up that blast radius, you know, you'd have to opt in to having access across accounts as opposed to opting out of them, right? So it just makes more sense to have individual workloads, individual teams, individual environments, you know, dev, test, production in individual accounts.
Right.
But then, of course, as you do that, now you've got a bunch of accounts to manage, and that's where things like Controltower and Service Catalog come in to kind of bring that back together and allow you to apply some of those guardrails and controls, you know, at scale across multiple accounts.
And having guardrails and controls is probably really important for overall compliance as well.
It is. If you think you need to do n number of tasks for every account to get it to whatever level of compliance you need to get to, it's easy to miss something, right? You've got to do 50 different things. Did I do 48? Did I do 49? When everything is fully automated and controlled, you know, with a built-in service like Controltower, you can sleep easy at night, right? You know that every account is built the exact same way. You know, we have our built-in guardrails that we can apply either across the board or we can be really granular. You know, you can kind of phase them in. You know, a lot of times customers will have, you know, a set of baseline things they need to have everywhere. And then as they get more restrictive, you know, maybe, you know, dev, you know, then prod, and then potentially some of your more compliant environments, you know, your HIPAAs and PCIs, things of that nature, they're going to be adding things on. And it's going to always inherit those guardrails. It's always going to apply them, you know, at scale. But the other cool thing is we allow customers to bring their own, you know, individual guardrails as well, right? So we'll do all of that undifferentiated heavy lifting, and then we allow you to bring in all that stuff that's important to your business.
I think, you know, we use this analogy a lot. I actually don't really like it because I'm a vegetarian, but in the containers versus like running your own server type, you know, this was a conversation being had probably a decade ago at this time, but you used to have servers that you would manage. They're called pets, right? And then you had containers, and they're cattle. Like, you don't have to care about them as much as you care about your pet.
Yeah.
Kind of like an AWS account in that respect, too. If you have one that's, you know, a pet, right, that's completely different than all the other AWS accounts that you have, it becomes more difficult to manage, especially when you start having more and more of those. You know, you've got an AWS account that looks like a duck-billed platypus on one side. You got one that looks like an elephant over here, you know, and it's just not really
the snowflake effect.
Exactly.
Yes. You know?
And
there's care and feeding associated with snowflakes, where things that are, you know, reusable or ephemeral, you can create net new, and everything's going to be applied for you. You know, you can create environments that are built for purpose. You can get rid of them when you're done. build something new, and it's going to be built the same way every single time.
Is that a good way to think of Controltower? Basically, it's like a vending machine for AWS.
Precisely a vending machine. Yeah, we have our account factory that you can build new accounts on the fly, and you can pick what you want applied to that account by which OU you choose, right? So we've got guardrails. Our guardrails are tied to various organizational units, and by selecting that organizational unit, when you create that new account, as soon as that account is spun up and you get your welcome email, those guardrails are there. Right, and if you've got something, whether it be Terraform or CloudFormation based, that you want to add on an addition, you want to do, IAM policies, you want to build a VPC, that can be done right out of the gate as well.
And you mentioned guardrails a few times. Are there other guardrails that we can apply as well? So you mentioned some for IAM and maybe networking as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So really, we've got our built-in guardrails, but anything that you can build with CloudFormation or Terraform could be applied to your environment at instantiation. And not only then, if you want to then update that environment, you want to do a version-based approach, right? You want to update things at scale, you can use Controltower to kick off and orchestrate that as well.
That's really cool. And how about region selection? Can you lock down and have a guardrail around regions?
We sure can. We have Region Deny, which was something that was released in the last year. Not only can I opt in and out of regions, from an AWS environment perspective, but I can even do it at the OU level.
Wow.
So I can say, hey, this is my OU that's supposed to be in, you pick your geography, and I want to make sure I have access to that geography from there, but I've got some other workloads that may be in the European regions that need to keep things within region, and I got to make sure the data doesn't get out. We can apply a region deny to just those accounts and not impact the other accounts.
Really good for use cases like GDPR, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool.
So you can make sure you keep things within that region. And I'll show when we get to the demo how we can do that.
Yeah.
Super easy.
I don't want to delay us too much, but I did have one more question for sure before we get to the demo. You mentioned barriers in the beginning of like it's smart to have accounts act as a barrier between things like test, prod.
Yep.
But also, there are barriers, especially at very large companies, between teams sometimes, meaning if you're on the security team, you may not be working day to day with the dev team, right?
Yeah.
And if you're on the dev team, you may not be working day to day with the ops team even, right? So you have these, corporate barriers, so to speak.
You do.
But I need to get my job done without having to pull in 8 different people or 8 different groups to get approval to do something.
Yeah.
You also mentioned Service Catalog. Can you talk about maybe Controltower and how Service Catalog work together? So I, as a dev, for example, don't have to go out to 3 different teams just to find a place to go run my code, right?
I love Service Catalog. So where Controltower is really foundational, with the things that apply to everything, Service Catalog really brings it up to the application level, right? So it could be an application that has 5, 10 different products in it, or it could even be a simple offering like, hey, I just need compute, or I just need storage, right? And so each individual user or team, as they log into Service Catalog, are presented with a catalog-based set of resources that they can launch. And we can be really prescriptive on those items in the catalog. We can apply tagging. We can apply enablement roles. So let's say I wanted to allow this group to launch a database, but I didn't necessarily want them to go into RDS and do some of the more intricate tasks. Right? I can allow you to create, modify, delete, and nothing more. Or maybe add some operational tasks like taking a snapshot, or doing a rollback or something like that. And I can give that to you and to your team, but then potentially not to another team, right? So it's something that would help enable groups consume products that were built, that were basically hardened to the compliance that your customer or your company requires. And you can consume them either through the GUI, through CloudFormation, through CLI or API. There's so many different ways you can consume those products through Service Catalog.
That all sounds really cool. And you mentioned tag-based and maybe role-based and access controls. And we're here live at Reinforce in Boston, which is a security-focused conference for AWS services, partners, products, and you said you have a demo too. So can you show everyone here who is watching the security-related for Controltower what it's all about?
Absolutely. So let's cut over to my screen here. And the first thing that I wanted to show, we talked about region deny, because this comes up a lot with our data residency conversations. We have a bunch of different guardrails for data residency, but I think this is the one that is most applicable. And this is where you're opting in, right? So in my case, if you can see my screen here,
Got it.
I've got
governed, not governed.
governed versus not governed. But what I also did is I said, hey, I'm going to deny access to
Oh.
anything that's not governed. So in this case, my US East 2 and my US West are currently denied. So if I want to create something new, so I'm going to switch over, as a user here.
It's funny, like, you
what-
mentioned data residency, but honestly, that also protects you from having, because attackers often will spin up workloads in regions that they see are not being utilized to try and
something
hide.
that you probably don't have your eyes on, right?
Yeah, so just to deny it outright if you're not going to use that region, that's great. That's
Yeah,
like
and
one
on top
less
of-
attack vector.
On top of that, you could probably use it to help control some costs too, so you don't use regions that you're not using.
Exactly.
And cost optimize
Something
your
could
overall
be there,
accounts.
even global resources that
Yeah.
may not need to be in that region. So you'll see right here, you're already seeing that I've got a problem. I switched from a supported
yeah.
region, right? So
Okay.
I had US East 1. As soon as I switched over, I picked Singapore just because I knew it's one that was on my list as denied.
And now you're getting API errors.
And then going to get errors, right? So you instantly have these retries. But let's say I went ahead and tried to create a VPC because maybe that didn't, pop up.
More errors.
Instantly get errors. And
Okay.
this is really going to work across the board, right? I can go to RDS, try to create a database there, something pretty common. And you can see again, I'm in AP Southeast.
So
As
it's
soon
doing
as
the
this
round
comes
trip.
up-
It's flying all the way around the world right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
all the way from Boston to Singapore and back, right? And so as soon as this
Hey,
this
Control
loads up-
Tower demo, can you take pictures from Singapore, please, and send them back to us?
There we are. So again, I'm logged in as an administrator, right? So it's not that I don't have access. This is a foundational based control that even an admin can't get around that has prevented me from creating things outside.
That's really cool. I like how you can lock down the region and force denies to happen within that region, or
Yep.
the regions that are not supported.
Exactly. And again,
Cool.
you can be granular at the OU level. So I can have
Yeah.
some OUs in, some OUs out.
And you mentioned guardrails. Are you able to show some of those?
Yeah. Yeah, so our guardrails are really split into two different categories, right? So we have a preventative-based guardrail, which is an SCP-based approach. So let's say you have a
And that's a service control policy.
service control
Okay.
policy. Thank you. And let's say you had a policy where you were trying to prevent data at rest. All data at rest has to be encrypted. If you had a preventative-based policy and you want to create that S3 bucket or that EVS, and you didn't check your encryption, it would immediately come up and say, sorry, this has been prevented by your administrator, you can't do this, as opposed to a detective-based control that would allow you to create that artifact, but it would immediately come back to my dashboard. And because we try to not do anything uncompliant here at
Okay.
Reinforce, this would go red and you would see we have a non-compliant
Got
item.
it, okay.
And then I can basically drill down to the account level, to the product level and see exactly where that is.
So preventative would prevent you from doing something, and detective is like a magnifying glass where it says, you've done it, but I'm looking at you, I'm watching you.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you can take action. Some
That's what you
customers
say
will
to me all the time, Aaron. I'm watching you.
I'm watching you, AM.
Yeah, you do say that.
So it depends what you want to do with that information. At its base, it's going to flag in the single pane of glass in our dashboard. If you'd like, at times we set up a topic so you can have an SNS where it basically open up a ticket, send an email,
Okay.
or you can be even more intensive and say, hey, if I see this condition, shut it down, roll it back. You can do any number of tasks once you have that condition in place.
You could probably even see it in like Security Hub.
Yeah,
Yeah.
precisely.
But we're
And-
here to talk about Control Tower. Let's continue.
Hey, we love it all. But the cool thing about our individual guardrails is that, minus the mandatories, which are there to prevent, Control Tower, it basically preserves the integrity of Control Tower. So the mandatories need to be there. Everything else is an opt-in, whether it shows as elective, whether it shows as highly recommended, and these get opted in at the OU level, right? So
Okay.
you may have a sandbox environment that you want to leave a little bit, a sandbox environment you leave a little bit more open-ended, where a dev and production environment, you're going to start paring some of those alerts down.
No, that's really, really, really neat. And one thing that I can see is you're probably going to have some customers that are approaching Control Tower in different ways. Can you talk about those as well?
In different ways, and what do you mean?
So different controls, different governance, and their ability to use elective, mandatory, preventative, detective types of guardrails. Do you have some examples you can talk about?
Yeah, so you have certain environments. Let's say you have a static website that needs to have an open S3 bucket, and having an S3 bucket set to public is generally one of those things we always try to lock down. But
Block public access.
Yeah, exactly. But you may have some marketing-based access, that you're going to give somebody PDF files or a menu or that sort of thing. What we try to do in those cases is we build an OU for exceptions, and we try to manage as exceptions so that everything else is managed to the policy, right? And so your exceptions environment is going to be a standalone. It's going to have more, intense monitoring from a detective standpoint, since we're going to be allowing certain things to come through. And that's how we keep, certain workloads segregated from other workloads from a control standpoint.
That's really neat. And how about best practices?
Yeah, so all of our guardrails were built on best practices, right? So they've all been through AWS review, and everything that we have in here, and if I could probably sort this in such a way where it says the guidance is going to be, I guess I'd do it the other way, strongly recommended, right? So all of these, as the name would imply, we feel that they should always be in place unless there's a business and or technical reason to take them out, right? And again, they should be managed as exceptions.
I like this because we can make it really easy for our customers to be able to find the best practices easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And then going back to Service Catalog, as we start moving up the chain and we start talking about, products at the product level and at the application level, we also have things, which want to talk about things being easy. We have a very extensive getting started library that has, over 200 products in it right now. It has AWS solutions. It's got, config conformance packs. We've got quick starts that somebody could take, and it's as simple as picking, and I'm just going to pick the top one on the list and say add to portfolio. And I'll talk really quick about what portfolios do, but it is as easy as this to add a baseline offering, again, AWS best practices that can then be shared to either one account, to your entire organization, or to individual organizational units.
That's really, really cool.
And in terms of Service Catalog, for anybody who has never seen Service Catalog before, when you're going in to build your own offerings in your Service Catalog, is it just basically, I'm going to put together a CloudFormation template that has my preferences baked into it, and then that's going to be what's deployed? Or what are some of the more details of Service Catalog?
That's the starting point, and you can do a lot with CloudFormation, right? So let's say you have, different options that you want to have, or you want to eliminate options. Like let's say everything that's going to be in development, and we're going to pick on EC2 for a minute, is going to be a medium-based, right? You don't want to give them, very expensive compute options, right? You can take some of those options away and only give them those that were curated for that particular workload. Other times you're going to pull that, that parameter from an external source, so you can bring that in and say, hey, I'm going to ask the question. If you're going to be building a sandbox environment, you're always going to get a T2 micro or that sort of thing, and it's going to just take that question away from the end user so that it's more of a t-shirt size offering. But we can kind of take that further with constraints, where let's say you have one template that's going to be shared to multiple environments. I can actually be prescriptive on what options are available to the different environments based on that particular workload. And the other cool thing about Service Catalog, right, is that what you see in the portfolio, which is our grouping of products, differs based on your job role. So a developer for one application group is going to see their application and those baseline resources that are applicable to them, where somebody else is going to have a completely different experience, and they're going to see what's only been curated for their environment. Okay. Again, that'll help keep people, keep those budgetary costs down, so they're not provisioning resources they don't have access to. It's going to help put things in the right VPCs and the right security groups, kind of that tie-in back to security, so that things are created in the right way every time, right out of the gate.
That's really cool because now Controltower offers a lot of control.
Yeah.
It's the tower of control. And so you have role-based access control, tag-based access control, all within Controltower. You have the ability to provision to different accounts and organizational units. But how about more information? So the demo was fantastic. Where do people go to learn more?
We have so many different resources. That's a great question. We have a management and governance set of blogs and releases. That's probably the best place to see for things that are coming out. We've got a
Is that the Cloud Operations and Migrations blog, maybe?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, it is.
cool.
And we also have over 150 resources now on YouTube, our how-to videos that'll not only take you through foundational elements for these services, but also specific, applications on how to use these products better. And it takes you through in 7 minutes or less how to spin something up. So highly recommend that for anybody that wants to know more. And they can also reach out to us as well.
How do they do that?
We have a variety of different options. We do have an email address they can reach out to us to. They can go through their account teams, through the technical account manager. There's lots of different ways that we can get involved, through spec recs and things of that nature. So
Perfect.
we'd love to hear from people. We do host multi-customer activation days for Controltower. They usually go on about once a month in different geographies. So if anybody's interested in that, highly recommend it. It's about a 3 or 4 hour experience that will take you through how to apply this in your environment.
That's fantastic. Well, Alan, it's been a pleasure having you here, walking us through Controltower and governance and controls from Reinforce in Boston.
All right.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
us here. And yeah, stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back.